All right, we are close. We are less than 2 weeks away from Patriots training camp, which will officially open July 24th. It's Wednesday. Be there or come another day because other practices will definitely be more entertaining. And as we get closer, I've teased this, I want to say the last couple of months. New segments, new guests. We're just taking it to a whole nother level. But today we have to throw up a stop sign because we cannot myth bust, which was the plan for today's podcast episode. So instead, shout out to Amit, shout out to Joey, shout out to Jackson, who are the producers of this podcast, for stitching together a best of. So you are going to hear snippets of some of our best stuff over the last 3 to 4 months. I'm talking Devin McCourty and James White, Bob Socci, schedule talk, breakdown. What do the Patriots look like 2 years from now? So if you did not listen to every single episode over the last 3 to 4 months, first of all, I forgive you. Second of all, this is everything that you missed. And I want to shout out Amit, Joey, and Jackson again because, I thought about this a lot when I first started doing TV around here, is that it's the producers, it's the camera guys, it's the freaking satellite in space that really acts like the offensive line when we talk about running the football. You've heard me say this a billion times. The guy holding the ball is both the one who gets the yards and is probably the least important in that equation because running the football is a function of how many people on defense are in the box and how much ass is your offensive line kicking. So you watch me like you watch the running back hold the ball and go through the hole or bounce it out or kind of spin out, do whatever he does. But the only reason that running back goes anywhere, the only reason this podcast reaches anyone is because of those guys. Again, Amit, Joey, and Jackson, thank you very much for stitching this together. And so without that, any further, I'm going to take a knee here. This is the intro, the best of Pat's interference from the last 3-4 months. We'll be back next week, 2 episodes. Aaron Schatz is coming on Monday, founder of the now defunct. I always screw that up. Something is debunked if it's a theory. It's defunct if it's no longer in existence. Anyway, Football Outsiders, now FTN Fantasies. Aaron Schatz coming in with the Almanac by the FTN Almanac. You'll hear me say that a lot next week. And I think we might have Doug Hyde back at the end of next week as well. And if not, we'll do a mailbag segment. So without further ado, the best of, and then we are moving on and moving upward. Have you talked to Reverend Slate lately? Can you give us an update more? Either you guys, like what he's been up to in his new role? Because it sounds perfect for him, is what you just described.
Yeah, I mean, that was when I went up there. For most of the time I was there, I was just in the office with Giardi and Slate, and honestly, like it was a little bit about what they're doing. But I mean, we've known each other since my rookie year in 2010, so a lot of it was just like catching up and talking trash. And I think that the unique thing is for both of those guys is you were in something for so long, and now they're both in brand new roles. So I think both of them are like, man, I'm handling a lot of things that have nothing to do with football. And that's every coach I've ever talked to when they go from being an assistant to a head coach, or for Slate being a player to now being, coach / everything else and in between. It's how many things we deal with that don't necessarily on paper help us go win a football game, but it helps in the grand scheme of things. Like we were talking, he was like, we're talking about childcare. We're talking about the weight room and this thing and that thing. He was like we haven't even gotten to the 3 technique, the wide receiver stance, or the new kickoff. We haven't done ball. So that to me, it was fun getting there to talk to them about that, because I've heard, being back at Rutgers in college. And I remember when Chris Ash took over as a head coach, and he was like, I put out fires all day. Like I don't get to watch ball till the end of the day. So I think that has been pretty unique for both of them being into that. So it's fun being able to be there. And I think for me now being in media, same thing with James, is you learn and see so many things from you step back and you can just watch and enjoy the game of football. So I get to talk to them about conversations I have with like my coworkers. Like Jason Garrett to me has been a guy that I've learned a ton from, because the organization he was in was the Dallas Cowboys, everything, all eyes on you, decision making, all the things that he would look at and review. So whenever I get a chance to sit down with Giardi, I just like to pass on that knowledge and tell him the different things I've learned. So I always try to do that, whether it's in person or if we're catching up on the phone or anything like that. But he doesn't come to me to help be the head coach of the Patriots. I don't have those answers.
not to bust on your guy, but have you shared any clapping techniques that Jason might have passed on to anyone else? Because he got a lot of love in Twitter Spaces when you were playing for just his constant on the sideline. You aware of that? It's always this. Down 30, this. Up 30, or this.
Hey, you got to keep it the same, man.
Be consistent.
One real quick thing, because you mentioned putting out fires, and this isn't a fire, but it's not to make light of a rookie being anything more than a rookie. But when you talk about things off the field that don't talk to winning, that he might have to handle, Javon Baker's Zoom. I don't know how much either of you saw that, making people stand up out of wheelchairs. The first thought that hit my head was Bill would have traded his ass for a future fifth as soon as the Zoom was over. And is that something that you're talking about? And this goes to either of you, where it's like, I have to deal with this in a leadership position. You guys have been around other head coaches, even if it's not football. And if so, what was your reaction to hearing those?
It was funny. I talked about it with Judon on my podcast. I was like, that's a guy you got to take under your wing 100%. But I like the confidence, though. He's going to come in motivated. Like he said, he wants to bring the hard work, the winning mentality back in there. So I think he has the right mindset. I think it was more about, where he got drafted. He thought he should have got drafted higher than what he is. And now that's like the new thing with the kids. Like they jump on Instagram Live as soon as, as soon as something happens and they share their thoughts and feelings versus, in the past, you wait till the media calls you talk about it, you could do it all by yourself. So, yeah, he was still fresh, asking for where the drink's at and all that. So, he didn't get portrayed in the greatest light. But like I said, you see the videos of him working out against, some of the top corners from the draft and all that. So he's putting in the work. It's all about, when he shows up into the building. I don't think it'll be necessarily a big deal. I'm sure Mayo have something cooked up for him the day he steps into the building for the team meeting. I'm sure they'll get a big kick out of that, especially if he's not winning some reps early.
I thought it was hilarious that first day, like MF and liquor. It wasn't just where the drink's at; it's where the MF and liquor at 1:00 on a Saturday.
And you need they need that. You need. I always tell people, James, myself, Slate, we were all a certain way. But the truth is, you can't have a team full of.
Why you ain't say me?
Yeah, what's up?
Huh? Just shows up at my house.
All day. Just walking around his big crib and look at it. I like this, man. What's up, James? What's up, Andrew? What's happening?
Yo, you're interrupting. We're doing a podcast, bro.
All right, podcasts are free.
Yo, come on in. What Jay say about Javon Baker's comments the other day?
Oh, I love it, man. You talk about superior confidence right there. And they're gonna have to tamper him down. Now, who knows though? Mail's in office now. The old ways are out the window. Let him talk his trash.
Well, I text Slate right away, and I was like, "Hey, the first thing I thought of when I heard that was this guy's the second coming of Jesus. Jesus is the only guy that was out there healing people, couldn't walk. Now he's making people walk. I was like, this is awesome. But I think you can't have everybody who's by the book. Like Jamie Collins came in. Jamie wasn't by the book. Jamie was a dog for the Patriots, making play. Like, you need guys to be like that, to have that edge to them. And it seems like Baker's going to have that. And it seems like they might have got the leader type of guy in Polk. And now you get to build a room around these guys, hopefully going forward into your future. So I liked it. I think receivers need to have a certain level of confidence. They need to be a little crazy. And I'm anxious to see what you guys say in training camp. Like, right, put them out there, and you're gonna have Pep's gonna be out there yelling and screaming. You're gonna have, so it's gonna be interesting to have that dynamic, to have those guys with Bourne, with KB yelling and screaming. I think that they need that. I think they need that on offense. Some skilled guys that just go out there and compete, but also gonna tell you about it. So it should be fun to see.
I'm so glad you say that. First of all, as the content creator media member in me, I will actually take a team full of Javon Bakers. But the point being that, like, if you did have that, what makes him special, or KB, for example, energy he brought in 21 when he first gets there, that stands out because he's a one of whatever in that locker room. Mm-hmm. But I am curious, when you text Saint Slate, this is the second coming of Jesus, and it's a 21-year-old who had just been in Instagram Live. How did that God-fearing man take that text, and how did he respond?
We just got emojis flowing back and forth, dying laughing.
I mean, hellfire and brimstone, or like fire comments, because those are very different, but it's the same emoji.
It was just laughing emojis, and okay. I think that's the thing, right? You draft a young kid who, like James just said, he's excited. He's like, man, all these guys are better than me, and comes in with a chip on his shoulder. And then I think the key is to back it up. And I saw James had Judon on, and Judon was like, he can't walk in with his book bag on, with his head down. Like, you said what you said, come in and work your butt off and go do that. Like, we want that. If I'm on defense, I'm all for Baker guy making people stand out of their wheelchairs. I'm all for it. That means touchdowns, yards. Let's see it. Let's have it, So should be fun to see.
Story time. A couple weeks ago, juggling the Celtics, this podcast, and Patriots coverage for the Herald. I said, why not? Let's add the Red Sox too. My cousin was in town. So were the Yankees. So we went to a game at Fenway. Not an easy ticket to get, as you might imagine. So what did we do? We went to Gametime, because Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball where you can get tickets faster and easier than ever. And believe me, I hunt like a parking spot that's worth the wait. And prices on Gametime for these tickets actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in pricing, including those pesky fees, plus views from your seat. And there's this, my favorite part, their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, and if you find a lower price elsewhere, they will credit you 110%. Again, 110% of the difference. So whether your family's here, you just want to catch a game this summer, the Sox are good, let's admit it, might not be true for long, go to Gametime, browse through the app, find those last-minute deals, look at the view from your seat, and again, the lowest price guaranteed, not to mention flash deals, some zone deals, everything is down there in the app. So go to Gametime now. Download the app, create an account, and use code CLNS. I did this. I got $20 off my own podcast, my own ad read with the Gametime app. Terms do apply. Again, all you have to do, download the Gametime app, create an account, and redeem the code CLNS for 20% off. Download Gametime today for last-minute tickets and the lowest price guaranteed. Let's go through the 2-minute drills, because I think that's, it's a 2-minute drill in minicamp, right? It's one day, it's one practice, not bad, all that stuff that I've been saying over and over and over and over again this spring. But I think those are the details that people want and are a little bit more illuminating, because this is not only just 11 on 11, it's 11 on 11 against a defense that can pull out any trick out of its bag. And we know this Patriots defense has got a just absolutely massive playbook, and specifically for third down. So how is he processing? How's he reacting to pressure, identifying the mic, all these different things. And Jacoby Brissett, as I mentioned, led one to a field goal. His other 2-minute drill was 5 plays, ended in a sack. No good. Drake Mays started with a check down, and I had this as possibly a sack. Then he hits Juju, I think, on that slant that you were talking about. Incompletion, throwaway downfield. Jalen Reagor on a shallow cross at around midfield. Then a little bit of trouble. It was Jalen Reagor incomplete down the sideline on a go route. He has another drag route, this time to LaMichael Petway. Clock is running. He hits Antonio Gibson to get a couple more yards, again, just across midfield, and then takes a sack. And what was, an incompletion to Kayshon Boutte, where I don't think he felt the pressure. After that, this was a shorter drive. Check down to JaMychal Hasty. He had an incompletion to Juju versus Isaiah Bolden, who got a pass breakup. There was a deep crosser he found Jalen Polk on, which I got to be honest, I don't remember a ton about that play. I know it was a really nice throw, his best, I think, of the 2-minute drill. And then he took a sack, and then he found Juju down the seam. The problem with that was there were 2 seconds left on the clock. You can't throw it in bounds. And Kyle Duggar would have taken Juju's head off and walked it off the field, like the pick six that he had, if he had been allowed to tackle him in bounds, which is why they blew the whistle. The drive was dead. From those 2-minute drills, what stood out aside from the check down steal?
Yeah, that over route, I believe, was by the right sideline and was one of his better throws of the day. I was actually we should have conferred on this one, because I was curious why that one got blown dead. I couldn't tell if it was a sack or not, but like you said, either way, that long seam route was it to Juju.
Yep.
He absolutely would have gotten lit up by the safety. So that's one of those where I'm sure Juju and Drake May are going to have a conversation after the film and say, please don't do that on Sunday to me. Those are high pressure, prideful periods where the offense and the defense are competing like crazy. So there's a lot of pressure. Those are, I would venture to guess, the most valuable periods of practice for the coaches, and it gives the guys in the locker room a lot of ammo to go at each other after practice to say who won those periods. The defense very clearly did. I think it was sort of an encapsulation of where the offense is as a whole. They're behind the defense. And part of that is there should be some nervousness there because this is a passing camp. They are set up to be conducive to offensive success. The other part where you just say, well, it's just so early in the process with a new coaching staff and a completely different quarterback room. So you're going to expect some of these growing pains against an experienced defense with a defensive-minded head coach who has a lot of experience running that exact same group. So, you take some of the good with the bad, and you just sort of understand it. One thing I did right today in my quarterback breakdown was that the big thing for me, I don't want to, take too much time on this topic for you because it's looking a lot further ahead, but like I would expect Jacoby Brissett to be the starter going into training camp. I don't care about that. What I really want to see is what week 3 looks like. When the pads are on and everything's a lot more difficult and Drake May has a chance to put all these days together and develop some consistency. That's when you really want to see him catch or surpass Jacoby Brissett. You're talking like August 15th, right around there. You're going to start to get some joint practices thrown in the mix. Not even about the preseason games as much. Those are a valuable step, no question. But like, I just want to see how they look against each. Not that I'm going to be there necessarily at this point, but what they look like if you're the fans, the writers, whatever, when you're there every day and you can really measure those guys and develop the consistency. That's when it's really most important to me. It's not about week 1 of training camp or anything like that. Or even honestly, like we're sitting here, going through every single one of his throws in day 1 of minicamp. Like there's some necessary context there too. Like I always used to point out during OTAs, there'd be 10 on the schedule. We would see 3. A guy could be outstanding in 70% or terrible in 77 of those 10 that are close to the media. And the reverse in the 3 that are open to the media, and we're all of a sudden making a little too much of that. Similar, that's why I always like minicamp, because
we wouldn't make too much of anything we hear in the media, would we, Jeff?
We would never do that. But minicamp is usually a chance to see a couple practices in a row, a little bit of a non-traditional breakup in the middle of this one, but the consistency for stuff like this is important. So you just want to see some of what we take what we saw Monday and try to figure out if the coaches saw the same thing and how they react to divvying up the practice reps on Wednesday, and whether some trends develop, because the trends in these settings are more important than anything.
You're absolutely right. And that leads me to the last question about Drake May, which we will not answer right away, but it continues what you're just hitting on here. And the question is, what can we say with certainty right now, June 11th, about Drake May? Spoiler alert, I'm going to say not much, right?
Yeah.
But because if anyone is certain right now about Drake May, when he's going to start, how he's going to look, how good he'll be in the National Football League, and again, I'm serious because I said it and spelled it out, not just NFL. I don't want to hear from them right now. No one knows. The Patriots don't know. Gerard Mayo was asked a question yesterday about the kickoff rule and all these different teams that are planning, you're going to have a safety actually kick off because he needs to be a good tackler, and you really don't want Chad Riley there as your last line of defense. And he said flatly, I don't know. And in the previous regime, that would be a deflection. Of course, Bill had spent all that time thinking about it. I'm open to the possibility Gerard was just deflecting, but I think he's being authentic. And I know he's being authentic when he's asked about Drake May and says, we'll have to find out, because the trends you talked about, the consistency, doesn't happen in May. It doesn't happen in June. It's late July. It's all of August. It's early September. Practice after practice after practice in pads and the preseason. They don't know how he's going to react. So it is fun to be like, week 7, he's going to make his debut in London. That's what's going to happen, and start to build these scenarios. We don't know. Drake May doesn't know. Gerard Mayo doesn't know. So I don't want to spend time on that. It's a great point that you make of like, the truth is in the trends. That goes for all of training camp, but especially the players you know the least about, which is going to be Drake May. It's going to be the rookies. It just makes for boring radio, TV, and podcasts to be like, damn it, I don't know. Because, well, then why would anyone listen? But that's why we have you on, and we start with stories about farting.
I'll pick 3 plays that stood out and try to go off of that. One was the scramble that he had, I think, in the second team period. Maybe it was the first team, whatever it was, very early. And like you said, you don't want to see scrambling from the quarterback in this setting. But I thought that was interesting because he quickly or immediately identified man coverage, and the middle of the field just parted like the Red Sea. And he was, it's tough from our angle, I would say 15, 20 yards downfield. And all of a sudden he's one-on-one with a safety. And you would just love to see how that would have played out in a live situation, because that could have been like a 60-yard touchdown run. Maybe it's a 20-yard gain. Either way, it's a good play because you've got a big physical quarterback who we know can run the ball, and saw something that he liked and he took advantage of it. So that was a good play. he had a throw in 7-on-7s in that deep red zone drill over a defender. It was probably a linebacker in a shallow zone, and he hit is it Bell, the rookie tight end, I believe, for a touchdown. Yeah, I mean, arcing over a leaping defender into the back part of the end zone, and that was just a really good example of identifying where he was going and making an outstanding throw. And not, I'm not as regular of an attendee in Foxboro as I used to be, but I haven't seen a throw like that at Gillette Stadium in quite a while. So
now let's stay there, because I think just really quickly, those two plays that you mentioned, and again, we don't know anything yet. We're going to need to see this over and over again to have trends, not just a single example. But the first one was obviously about his reaction athleticism. Second reaction, right? You drop back, you see the field. What are you going to do next? What's your second reaction? Sometimes it's extending plays. Other times it's scrambling. And again, I don't want to see young quarterbacks scramble a whole lot in minicamp, but he recognized exactly what was happening. You saw the takeoff speed in a way that goes, oh, they haven't had anyone who can do that playing quarterback. I mean, I would say you can go back to Cam Newton, is a little bit more dynamic than the past his prime Cam Newton that the Patriots got.
Yeah.
So that's new to this. Second part is the arm talent that you just hit on. Like, we're going to notice these things. I think people will once they get to training camp in the preseason. That's different from Mac Jones, even to a degree, late stage Tom Brady, that Drake May has. And that's why it's a new ball game as much as the new offense and offensive coordinator. How they're going to play and how he's going to play from the quarterback position will feel very, very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And another play, actually two more. One I'll do quickly. I was later in the practice. They were coming in our direction. So it's probably one of those 2-minute drills, but like quick pressure in the pocket. He stepped up and delivered a throw with confidence. It was complete. I can't remember to who. I believe it was toward the left side of the field, but so much emphasis on his footwork. He had really good footwork, pocket presence, and an understanding of where his open guy was going to be. So that was, again, like I'm sitting here criticizing him for his slow processing speed, but it wasn't on every single play. So there were times when he absolutely was able to get away from it or get away with it. And then there was another play. It was an incompletion, but it stood out to me. It was during 7-on-7s, and he had an over-under concept, and the under going to his left, so our right, was wide open immediately. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, that's an easy completion, catch and run, going to be a good play. And it was almost like as Drake May looked at it, he saw there was, I don't remember if it was a linebacker or a safety playing up, was kind of creeping toward where that receiver was going to get open. And that was probably going to be, if not a batted pass, an interception. And May completely broke off it, and he went to the over route to the right side of the field, and it was incomplete. I don't remember if it was good coverage or a bad throw or whatever it was. I think it was more good coverage.
It was a drop.
Oh, it was a drop. Okay.
So just to jump in this, because it was a deep cross from Michael Petway, the tight end, who had a linebacker right underneath him and a safety converging. So this is a kind of second, third level throws. I mean, it was middle-ish of the field, going right hash, and he layered it in. That you're going, again, talk about different ways that the Patriots are going to experience a quarterback and quarterback play this entire season. That throw is it. That was my favorite throw. It was an incompletion, like you said, dropped by Michael Petway, who also had a huge touchdown grab. But it was, I missed the processing part, so I'm glad you brought that up, missing the underneath route, because the deep over was just pinpoint.
Yeah, and I liked that because it shows that, again, backing up, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but like the slow processing speed, which is expected, but he processed that in the exact time that you would want him to. And if it was a mistake that he's going to make plenty of mistakes like that in training camp. But he avoided that one. And I thought, tip of the hat to him for getting out of what was going to be very realistically a bad play and turning it into what was, an incompletion because of a drop. But I thought he deserved a lot of credit for checking out of that.
Yeah. And for the folks who, might be listening to me saying, oh, I missed this, and you didn't realize that. There are 22 people on the field. Early instances, we're looking at who's the offensive line combination, who is that guard. Oh, they just swapped him out. Mike Onwenu's playing right tackle for some of Jacoby Brissett's drives. Then he's at right guard. Why are they doing that? Who's in his place? Who's on the sideline? Is someone injured? There's a lot going on in training camp. It's not to excuse us, but a lot of times your favorite reporters, whether they're on this podcast or not, are asking other ones, hey, what did you have on this? Just to double check. So it's not that we're not paying attention. It's just like any football game. It's just a practice. There's a lot to take in. Let's end on quickly the question that I mentioned and teased earlier. What can we definitively say about Drake May? Understanding this is not going to be much, but something you know now. This is my favorite question to players and coaches this time of year. What do you know now, and this goes to you, that we didn't know at the start of OTAs, mid-April, or obviously in May's case, early May?
That's a hard one for me to answer, just because I'm not there every day. Because what I liked was that he completed. Let's see. I think you said 75%. I think I had 76%. I would venture to guess the discrepancy there is because maybe you or I counted plays that got blown dead or called as sacks, and one of us kept them or whatever. I going back basically 10 years, so a large sample size. Tom Brady was usually between 70 and 75% in this type of setting. So I've always set the bar at, like, you want to be in that window. That doesn't mean you're going to complete 70 to 75% in the regular season, but given everything that we've said and the constructive criticism about eventually that processing speed is going to come, eventually, you don't give them all the points for the checkdowns that kind of boost those numbers. But for a guy who is still learning, and again, it's one practice. I'm talking 70 to 75% over the course of an entire stretch of practices.
Oh, a whole training camp. That's where those numbers come from.
Yeah. Training camp is usually closer to 70%. If you can get between like 68 and 72, that's pretty good. Mini camp more often, or OTAs and mini camp between 70 and 75. You want it on the higher side of that. So in a one-off setting, that's a really good number to be at while you're still very clearly working through some natural inexperience.
Okay. I would say this again, we don't know anything, but what we can say is what we've heard and seen. And what we've heard from teammates is consistently he's asking the right questions. Rod Mayo stumbling into him, in the quarterback room alone. And it's a beautiful picture to paint, the exact thing you would want to say as a head coach. I'm not saying it was contrived in a PR meeting before they got to the microphone, but if they were to paint a picture, did not happen, that's something everyone is going to love and can picture in their head. But whether it's KJ Osborne saying Drake came up to me about a route adjustment when I was working with Jacoby Brissett in an OTA practice a couple weeks ago, or it's his offensive lineman or Ramondre Stevenson, they're all saying the same things. That I don't think is at all contrived. So for a kid who, yes, is still 21, yes, is still picking up a new system and learning how to process an NFL speed, it seems that his work ethic, in addition to his talent, which was evident in college, is real. How far does that carry him will depend on context, his teammates, the coaches, obviously. But for Drake May, it seems like he's going to reach the maximum potential that he can have on his part. At least, again, we don't know, but that's encouraging to me. This is not a guy who has stalled out in OTAs and minicamp, or B, received anything less than glowing endorsements, which matches up with what I'm seeing. Again, it's in the practice stats, it's in just the plays that we just cited, and it's afterward in the press conference. It's just all aligned. It's going in one direction, and that direction says he's getting better. And again, we don't know where that's going to go or how much better he's going to be, but that's what we know, and that's encouraging. Your word at the top. Not good, not great, encouraging.
There we go. We've reached common ground.
So in a little while, we'll all be boning up on fantasy football. Where can I get Ramondre Stevenson? Is Hunter Henry finally going to break out? Like Callahan's been saying so for years. What about Drake May? Jalen Polk, Pop Douglas, Javon Baker? Well, until then, you can play fantasy and win with PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports in America, because unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. What you do is you pick more or you pick less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can get in on the daily action today with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community. What that means is you and a bunch of your friends can win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks. That means turning $10 into 1,000. And if you want promotions, always a good idea, PrizePicks has you covered every single week. You can pick the player's stat projections on Tuesday for a lineup bonus, or you get your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Friday. So with basketball over, it's all on to baseball, and we've got women's basketball still. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, A'ja Wilson, you know the names. Follow them, play PrizePicks, and win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. I've told you this before. I do this with Sox games, whether I'm at Fenway or at home. So pick the player, pick the stat types, more or less, and that's it. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, you put in 100, they give you 100. If you download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS, that's CLNS on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
I think another thing that jumped out to me is how Gerard pointed out that Keon White is someone that he's felt like has taken a step forward. And I look at Keon, I thought he actually played pretty well last year, especially down the stretch. I think you saw him learn from some of the mistakes he made earlier in the year, sometimes where he got tricked on plays where his eyes were in the wrong place. You know, I remember doing a film thing on him. Hey, this is what he did the first time against Miami. He got caught up in this for 26-yard gain. He got caught up here. And then the second time they ran the same action at him, didn't get him, right? Like, so like there were a lot of signs like that over the course of the year where things that he messed up early in the year, he didn't mess up later in the year when he saw something similar or the exact same thing. And now to hear Gerard talk about it, it's not just as a player, so talking about just like being involved in the conversation, exerting a little bit more leadership, which I think talking to him last year, I'm like, he's a bright kid, but I'm not sure that he really wants to be in that role. I think he just wants to go line up against somebody and smack that guy, you know, like, hey, this is my job and I'm going to whack this guy upside the head and I'm going to make the stop. And to hear them talk about him in that way, I think it was pretty interesting because I wasn't sure last year that that would be the next step for him in that part of it. I thought like maybe he could brush up on his pass rush moves and be a little bit more consistent as a pass rusher. I didn't expect them to be talking about some potential leadership stuff there. So I think that's something to watch because I think he is a pretty fun player to watch. I do wonder, as I mentioned, the pass rushing stuff with him, I do wonder if just because of his size, like he's not going to be this bendy guy at the top of this thing. It's going to be more about power. And I think he needs to just hone in on a couple things and, you know, make that work for him. So those were a couple things that definitely jumped out at me. And I guess the last thing for me was just a lot of uncertainty on the offensive line. You know, City So didn't practice. We know Cole Strange is not going to be ready to start the season. You know, when is he going to be ready? If he's not going to be ready to start the season, you imagine Pup, then you're talking whatever, week 7, week 8, if he's lucky. So there's a lot of moving pieces there. And, you know, that may dictate, going back to the beginning of this conversation about the quarterbacks, that may dictate some of what they do with the quarterback too. Like maybe if they just don't feel comfortable with how they look up front, then maybe the debut of Drake May gets pushed a little bit until they find some stability there.
I'm glad you brought up Keon. He was on my list just reading those comments the other day. He's also an older prospect, so you kind of need him to figure it out now because of the physical potential that's pretty much going to be tapped, realized this year and next year, and that's it. You don't see guys make significant gains going into their late 20s. Like this is it now, mid-20s for Keon White. As far as the offensive line, I'm with you. I don't even know if Cole Strange is out until late November, early December, what the upside would be of bringing someone in cold. Again, he'll practice, he'll lift, he'll rehab, he'll be probably in the best shape of his life. But at that point, you're in the stretch run playing your most important games. And sure, they might be out of the playoffs already. But what's the upside of having a third-year player start over a rookie in Layden Robinson or some 2023 draft picks if it is Antonio Mafi and City Sao, if they make the team or prove to be serviceable. So it's a tough spot for Cole Strange. It's unfortunate, but that's really a lot of the offensive line where you have more bodies than starters and questions still than answers. Okay, let's wrap on this. This is going to be fun because there's a lot more on the table. We don't have to talk about the same old stuff and then qualify and be like, oh, we don't really know. It's only OTAs, they're in shorts, pads, blah, blah, blah. What will the Patriots, Mike Giardi, in 2026 look like? So this time, 2 years from now, coach, player, front office changes, wherever you want to start, and then we'll get into how good they are and then the biggest changes in offense and defense.
This is where Drake May will make the leap. This is where Drake May goes from the 60-ish% passer who shows you flashes of brilliance but will turn it over or make a bad read into the Josh Allenification, if you will, of him, like the big third-year leap. I think that's what you're going to get with that player. You know, he'll be 24 years old, 23, 24 years old, like just starting to feel it now, feeling comfortable in the system. He'll have had plenty of games to start under his belt. and that's when he
What does
launches
that look like, though?
in
Are
year
we
3.
talking Pro Bowler? Or are we talking second team All Pro? Or are we talking
We're
Drake
talking pro. We're talking. No, we're talking Pro Bowler with. Yeah, there'll be a period of push where someone will be like, he might be an MVP candidate this year. You know, they'll go on a little run. They'll win 4 in a row. Drake will be throwing, 275 a game, 2 touchdowns, no picks, rushing for 40, rushing for 50 and a touchdown, truck somebody, and everybody's going to get all ramped up and like, oh, he could be MVP this year. And then, they're not that great. And
we have stuff to talk about like this. So we just have to invent things. Yes.
Yes. So there you go. That's
Okay.
one. I'll give you another one. They'll be on a different offensive coordinator.
Oh, why?
Because I don't think this was their first choice. So even though I think that Alex has the potential to be a good fit for what they're trying to do in the short term, I'm not sure that's going to be the direction they're going to want to go in the long term. And he hasn't proven to be that guy, and he's already in his 50s. So I wonder. So I'll give you that as the offense stagnated a little bit in year 2, and Drake's it was good, but it wasn't great. And like, we gotta find somebody else. Let's make the change, which isn't always the wisest thing to do, as we've seen. But you wanted predictions? I'm giving you a prediction. That's a prediction.
There you go. Okay, as far as big changes, I can see the vision for a change at offensive coordinator, right? Because if you're a head coach who's presided over a losing team and you're going into year 3, that's the make or break year. And if you're going to make a change, you need a scapegoat. And we saw this in Chicago. Matt Eberflus fires his offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, who goes elsewhere and gets a job. And they make a change, and then they draft, obviously, Caleb Williams, and they're going on. But if the Bears underwhelm this year, it's Matt Eberflus who's next. So if Gerard Mayo is feeling any kind of heat, which is hard to imagine right now, as we're in, as I don't know if you've heard, the honeymoon period.
Really? Softballs, as he said. They were throwing him softballs.
Yes, 4-13 to 6-11. We'll change that pretty quickly, and that could be what's ahead of them. I, however, think AVP is going to stay. The more I've learned about him, the more I believe a little bit. Not necessarily he'll ever be a top 10 offensive coordinator here, but he's the right guy for where they are now. And if you're going to make another leap, I think that development piece is key, continuity. And I think he's more flexible schematically than we're giving him credit for. And it's also a style that's going to suit not just Drake May, but Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, and the way they want to play offense. Can we just stop scheduling games, 2 games against the same opponent in a 3-week stretch? I know it's my job. Like you said, I try to be professional in these press conferences. I think largely I succeed. I'm so glad I have 6 months to think about this. What are we going to ask Gerard and players about the Bills, and tell me about their defense, what the test is in this matchup? If the game doesn't matter to the Bills, you just saw them less than 2 weeks ago, and now you're going to go play them again, a team that you know so well and study. Like, fans, no way can you get that excited about seeing the same opponent that, again, was 2 weeks earlier playing you in their own place, and then they come to visit. Like, can we at least spread this out to 4 weeks? NFL, if we're going to accommodate requests for travel and timing and bye weeks, and not fulfill all of them, by the way, the Patriots wanted to stay out west for the Niners and Cardinals games, and not because you, Bob Socci, called them a million times. The league office has told me this. But can we just spread this out a little bit?
Andrew, I said the same thing earlier today.
Really?
To someone. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to be redundant here. Now, from a selfish standpoint, it does make the job of preparing one spotter charts. I know that's a great concern to the fan base and to you writers on the beat. It does make that part of the job for me easier. It's just a matter of updating a few numbers, but nonetheless, I hate it. We've been in this situation before, preparing for the Patriots and the Jets twice in a 3-week span. I think to have the schedule fall the way it does too. I hate the fact that they play the Jets twice in the first half of the season. You don't see them again as a division foe. You don't see the Bills like last year until the end of the season. Now you get them twice in 3 weeks. I hate that part of it. My wild card thought does relate to the Bills as well. What happens if Buffalo doesn't fare well as expectations going into the season accompanying them?
Oh boy,
have everybody believing Sean McDermott comes in to Foxboro week 18, game 17. There's a former Patriots head coach.
Oh, there it is.
Who's out in the media.
There it is.
Hey, I'm just saying.
No, say the whole team name. It's right there.
Right? Huh?
The Buffalo.
To me, I think the wild card thought is, what if the Bills, in the minds of Bills fans, in the minds of Bills owner Terry Pegula, are underachieving by that stage of the season and aren't set up to have a successful playoff run, or I don't think this is going to happen, but wind up missing the playoffs. I mean, this team has gone through some substantial changes, and going into that stretch twice with the Patriots in 3 weeks, what's it going to be like for McDermott and the Bills at this stage for him if they're not seemingly poised to make a deep run in the postseason and finally win that Super Bowl for Buffalo?
Oh my God. I'm ashamed of my wild card thought. I thought I was just, fair, complaining about games. You are suggesting that the Jets in a snowy regular season finale knock out the Bill Belichick era. And then the Patriots a year later, possibly back in Foxboro in a game that is likely to have inclement weather or at least freezing temperatures, play the Bills and then usher in the Bill Belichick era in Buffalo. The Buffalo Bill Belichicks is what you just proposed. This is the spiciest thing that has been said of this podcast. Spicy Bob has to be here to stay. I want to get him to be the 5th or 6th co-host on Rich Sirleaf's new show. Move over Michael Hurley and Mike Giardi, and everybody. Definitely move over Mike Giardi. But that was outstanding, and I had not thought of that before, and I'm ashamed that I didn't. But I'm so glad you brought it to my attention. The Buffalo Bill Belichicks.
It's outrageous.
Oh, come on. Don't back away now.
I've got to reel this back in now. The genie's long gone.
Yeah.
Look, I felt this way last year, and I don't know if I said this public, but I think people look at the Cowboys as a potential destination still for Bill, because I think Bill could still coach. He's still a great coach in that kind of team. And I just wonder, and I've thought this since last year, and I know I'm not alone. If you're Terry Pegula, you watch the Patriots against the Bills, the way you reference the Patriots win against Buffalo, and you go back to that wind and snow game in late December from Mac Jones's rookie season, and you're in the division. You butted your head against his teams for years and lost. You finally thought you got over the hump, but you can't win that Super Bowl. Maybe the McDermott era, is winding toward an end. I think he's a good coach. I think he's done a tremendous job there.
Definitely.
But the expectations are what they are in Buffalo because of the success that he's established. But if the Bills were to fall short of that bar this season, then I think the wildest scenarios could be in play by week 18 of this season, and maybe they're not so wild. Maybe they are.
It's funny you mentioned Gonzalez because we talked to him yesterday. I'm recording here Wednesday morning. It's gray, it's rainy, it's somehow May in New England. It was the first time he spoke to us since last year, since before the injury, and he spoke as if he thought Bill was still the head coach because he wouldn't give details on anything injury related, which is fine. We know to keep it general. Or do you think you'll practice in OTAs? I'm not looking for a guarantee. Are you cleared yet? How's the shoulder? He said he was healthy, but I looked up not only just his age. He's only 2 months older than Drake May. So let's say May hits, Gonzalez hits, Barmore. You've got 3 cornerstones under 25 right there. Throw in Polk or Javon Baker if you're feeling optimistic. If not, here's my second point, is that he played against Polk in college, and Polk went for 3 catches and 91 yards. And I asked him about that play. It was a post route against cover 4. First of all, he made clear it was not his fault. But it's just to say that, the guys that they brought in, yes, we don't know about Jalen Polk, have had success against NFL defenses. That Oregon defense had a lot of NFL defenders on it, even though we haven't seen them at this level. And so he's got a lot of respect for Polk. The guy goes back to Texas, and just little tidbits here and there, because it was good to hear from Christian Gonzalez, even if he didn't really want to talk to us too much. So he did say he was, quote, a little sick that the rookies this year won't have to wear numbers in the 50s and 60s. I'm not sick. I'm very glad for that.
It's time to move on from all the old ways. I mean, even the good and bad. It's just time to start new and fresh and something different, a different look, a different vibe. Like I said, not expecting them to go out and win 5, 6 Super Bowls, but it's time to move on from the old. And I think Brady's roast was the opposite, the exact ending we needed to everything old with the Patriots. They clowned each other and got it all out the way, and now we can move on to something new.
Yeah, I have to keep focused. I would love to talk Brady Bros. My first tweet was like, I can't quote any of this. Not that I felt obligated to, but you're participating in. And then of course I said a couple quotes out there. So those were the highlights to me, or thoughts are on X or whatever. Okay, really quickly. You have 4 best moves. I have 4 best moves. You have the Patriots 3 worst moves to the offseason. I expect there to be some overlap. I've already hinted that Drake May will come up in this conversation. So for the best move, your top out of these 4 that they made this entire offseason really quickly was what?
Quarterback. Getting Drake May. That's my number one. Getting Drake May, because everything revolves around the quarterback. If the quarterback's not right, none of it's right. None of it's going to matter. They've made sure that it's a QB league and everything. Success is all determined about that QB. They went and got them a quarterback. They got their guy. You know, it wasn't the guy I wanted initially, but it's all good. But they got their guy, they got their quarterback, and they started building around him. So getting Drake May was my number one offseason move that my number one on my list for the best offseason moves.
So, in another thing that will not put any points on the board, but because it's May, and these are the things that we talk about, what's your impression been of May when he's met the media here so far? A couple of interviews here and there.
He sounds like he's nervous. First of all, he sounds like he's real nervous, talking real fast. I mean, he is a country kid, so he's gonna kind of talk fast like that, real excited. But I think he's genuinely enthusiastic to be a Patriots quarterback. I mean, the whole idea of, is he happy to be here? Does he want to be in the North? All this other stuff. I think the dude's real excited about being an NFL quarterback, and he's happy to be, to be a Patriot. I'm pretty sure they're embracing it. They were impressed by having the one-on-one meetings with him and the interviews, whatever. So, I mean, I think people up in New England are going to have to adjust to him, but to me, he sounds like every other player in the South when they do interviews. But it's going to be an adjustment. But I think he's more, how can I say, he's more excited than what we got from Mac Jones. He's showing you a little more. He seems like a young kid that's just happy to play ball. But one thing I can take from the things he said is he's a baller. He's a gym rat. He likes to play football. Football is all that matters to him. Maybe it's the whole thing with his brothers and being in a house full of athletes, his pops, where competition and playing ball is all that really matters, and everything else gets put to the side. And I genuinely believe that's going to accelerate his growth and his talent in the league, because you could tell he's really about hard work and getting better. So hopefully that doesn't change about him, but I think the fans are going to grow to like Drake May.
Yeah, they haven't already. You know, it's funny you mentioned the family, because that's something that I came close to dismissing in the whole process, right? Like if you're going to what the house was like when this kid brought up as a reason to believe in him as a prospect, I'm like, you just skipped over, I feel like, 100 things that matter a little bit more. But the way I saw him interact, obviously all the success of his brothers that he's had, the only way to survive in that kind of family is to obviously compete and win and hold your own. And what that has led to, from what I've seen in these media appearances, is just a real sense of self and sense of comfort in your own skin. Something certainly I didn't feel at 21 or know what I wanted to do and how I was going to do it and whether I even could. This kid might bust out, but he at least will go into that locker room with the kind of security that not only just attracts people to you in any line of work or any line of place, but especially for leaders, and in a room of guys who grew up similarly, alphas, or people having to fight for their own playing time on a team or within a family. And so I think those things work in his favor, where it is authentic, it's genuine. But it also gets me thinking of, like, you know how those families, especially like if you own a beach house or if you rented a beach house, you have those signs that hang that are like live, laugh, love. What do you think was on the May family household? It's like, compete, kick some ass. If you lose, take a lap. Like there's something deeper than that, but what am I missing?
I mean, I agree with you with your father being a college quarterback or whatever. I think he played in the Canadian League or something like that. But you got your pops there, you got your older brothers, and you can tell they're ultra competitive. But I mean, the one thing I will say about him, when a comparison to what you had with Mac Jones, when things got tight for Jones, you see him on the sidelines looking like he didn't know how to handle himself mentally, what to do next. Man, how do I get out of this? And you can already tell the minute that May feels that way, he can see his brothers in the back like, dude, if you don't get it together, I'm going to come down there and get you together. Like, you can already tell he's not going to dwell on a negative play too long or a negative quarter or a bad game. And you can see he's going to want to bounce back get everybody involved. We're still in this. We're good. You know, you can kind of see he has that mentality. And I think that does come from playing with, you know, growing up with a brother who won a national championship on a baseball field, the basketball, pops being a quarterback, just being in that household. He's not going to dwell on down moments too long. And we have seen here in the past that you need a quarterback that can handle those moments playing in the New England area. So I think that's going to be a big, you know, feather in the cap for Drake May going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's pivot. The worst out of your 3 moves the Patriots made this offseason was what?
This is weird. I might be the only one here not addressing the running back situation. I wanted to see them get a younger running back in the draft. I think they need a horse, and not in the old school guy get 35 carries kind of way, but I do think they need to replace what you lost from Zeke Elliott, maybe a little more than that, because Stevenson's coming off an injury. He's getting a little older. I think they could have went and got a young running back, a burner, a kind of, I'm going to say a third down guy, but a kind of do it all running back, but somebody with some burst. And I think the way you protect a young quarterback, if you're going to play him early on, I hope they do, but I think you run the football. I think you find a way to not put your young quarterback, putting May in a position where he's throwing it 45 times by running the football. Now, they might address it as time goes on and might believe in the guys they already have there, but I was really looking for them to address the running back situation. And I would say get a Pro Bowler, but get a really good running back to help out your young quarterback.
So are you out on Antonio Gibson?
No, I think he'd be a good third down back for them. I think it's something they've been missing. And I think that's what Mac Jones had his rookie year. The running back, the production in Mac Jones' first year was crazy. I think they had like 2,500 total yards or something like that. Third down back, I think was Bolden, had like 500 yards of offense that year as a third down guy. And just having a guy to dump the ball off to, if you want to run those screen plays on third down, you have a guy who can legit do it on an elite level. But I think having a third down guy will help your young quarterback out. But I just wanted another guy in the backfield to go along with Stevenson in case he starts to wear down as time goes on.
That did not make my list, so I'm glad we're talking about it. And it's interesting too, right? Because Stevenson's in a contract year, and we have all of these extensions coming up. Barmore gets a big bag. Duggar resigns, Onwenu resigns, and you're looking around going, okay, who's next? And Stevenson's eligible, right? All those 2021 draft picks. I don't think it's good business to re-sign running backs to big money, particularly in second contracts. You have to be an outlier in a way that, as good as I think Stevenson is, just hasn't proven to be that way. Not to mention the workload the Patriots have foisted upon his shoulders these last 2 seasons, which will accelerate a decline, which might be years away, but you just don't know until it happens. And so I, like you, am in on Antonio Gibson and wrote up a scouting report on him for the Herald a couple of months ago. Soon after he signed, ran it by someone within the league who was like, okay, this makes sense. It's a little wordy, trim this, but just really underscore the fumbling part, because that's where everything breaks. If you can't trust the guy to hold on to the ball, he's not going to see the field. And I could talk about how he's a rare power pass catching back, right? You can trust him between the tackles. He's an excellent pass protector, according to PFF or any stats you want to find. Yeah. He's a good one-cut zone running back. This is going to be a zone running scheme. But if he busts, then it's Stevenson and Kevin Harris. And so I'm with you. I think it would have made my list had we gone to 5 or 6. But it's a fair point because, whether it's injuries or the fumbling issues, this is something that could crop up a lot faster than I think people anticipate.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be important. I mean, look at the coaching staff, the guys they brought in from Cleveland. We all seen what the Browns have been doing the last few years. They run the football. That's what they do. They run the football and to protect all 10 quarterbacks they used the last 2 years. But they still went 11 games or something like that last year, but they ran the football. They kept bringing in veteran running backs, and it kind of protected Flacco through last season and the other 3 quarterbacks that played. So I expected them coming in to be more of a run-heavy offense than what we've seen in the past, especially with a young quarterback and young receivers. You want to run to your strengths. Okay, we can run the football. We got decent tight ends. Okay, we'll play that way and play action through that. But I was expecting them, put it like this, to go out and get one of those young running backs, especially through the draft, when all the good running backs started fading later and later into the draft. I'm like, wait a minute, you can get an All-American here late, but they decided to go with the receivers and shore up their offensive line, which I don't have no issues with that. but I was still waiting and looking for them to somehow, some way land a running back. Now, some kid can pop in training camp, some guy they bring in, but I was expecting them to get a running back out of this. And that was my biggest disappointment with this Patriots team in this offseason.
Okay, your second favorite move, the second best thing the Patriots did this offseason was what?
Winu. Bringing the Winu back. Offensive
Agreed,
line.
yeah.
We saw the importance of the offensive line or lack thereof, last year or so. So I think retaining him, keeping him in the building, and good for him for wanting to stay, and good for them for bringing him back and realizing how important he is. And I'm glad they got that done and got him signed. So I would say bringing a Winu back is my second biggest offseason move for them.
I think this is obvious, and I agree completely. I mean, you could make an argument this is number one, just if you're against the idea that a quarterback, at the top of the draft guarantees anything, which obviously it doesn't. But, at some point you have to take the swing. They did, because Onwenu was their best player in offense last year. He plays a premium position now that he's a tackle. And it's not, a matter of left versus right anymore, because the guys on the right side are getting paid just as much. Because pressure in your face, as it turns out, Cerrone, is just as bad as pressure coming from behind you, and sometimes worse. It might not result in a strip sack as often, but it's going to affect the play, and it's pretty valuable. So Onwenu, whether he's at right tackle or right guard, based on his last comments, doesn't seem particularly keen on the idea of going to left tackle, which I know we'll get to a little bit later. You just have to keep your best players. Like he's professional. He's in his prime. He plays a premium position. This was simple. And just imagine for a second, because again, the left tackle situation is vastly different.
Yeah.
Had Onwenu walked and they balked at an extra couple million, and he goes to someone like the Giants, so I know who had interest. What are we saying now? Like, you can't play Drake May. You're not going to run the ball. You don't have any tackles.
You don't have anything. Yeah. It's now you're looking at it as a tank year. You're looking at your situation where you could be this year's Carolina Panthers. Just go from bad to worse. You don't want that. Not around here. Anyway, I mean, folks will end up losing their jobs with the outcry after that. But yeah, that one move, I think, I wouldn't say gave them all hope, but I think once he was re-signed, it kind of opened the door for them to re-sign other guys in the building and guys wanting to stick around. And I think that was a vibe that I don't know if the fans were feeling, but how many of these guys want to stay after Belichick left after last season? Are any of these guys going to re-sign here? And then sure enough, they re-signed him and guys start sticking around. But I think he's important to this offense. I think, like you said, probably the most important guy to this offense right now until they figure out on that left side. But I think keeping him around was huge. It allows you to throw the football, allows you to run the football, and it sends a message to your team that we will take care of our own. If you're good here, you produce here, we're going to pay you, you're going to stick around, and not really throwing a shot at the old regime, but that never really was a guarantee. So I think signing him was a big sign to everybody on many different levels.
And again, just to get ahead of what I think some people would counter, what does it matter that you're sending this message to the locker room? If you're good, we'll keep you. But you might just want to go get a bag elsewhere. That's great. The re-signings of internal free agents is so much higher in terms of the success rate, because you know what you have in the player. There's no projection of how is Jonnu Smith going to fit into this offense, or can we get Nelson Aguilar the ball downfield, or what's it going to be like for Jalen Mills if he just doesn't want to play corner anymore? Then we have to move him to safety. And this is not to knock any of those guys personally, but it used to be in free agency. You remember these guys would take visits and they would go see multiple teams, and then they would weigh their contract offers, and then they would sign. No. They talk behind closed doors, agents and GMs, and Jackson, whomever at the combine. And then they swap contract offers in the days leading up to the legal tampering period. That opens and the deals are done. You don't have time to get familiar to erase some of that uncertainty. And if you know you feel good about a guy, tie goes to the guy you already have. Now, it's a little more complicated than that, but I think it speaks to a more sound strategy for players, again, as I've said, play premium positions. I did not name my worst move of the Patriots offseason, but I hinted at it just there. They still, Cerrone, somehow after last season, in 2022, when there was a black hole at right tackle, have an established, proven starter on the left side. And this is crazy to me. Did this make your list?
Yep.
All right, go ahead.
It left tackle. I mean, I had it. It wasn't my second one, but yeah, it was his third. I had left tackle on there. They still didn't address it. I mean, they took the kid from Penn State. Can he play left tackle? Time will tell. I don't know. But like you said, they still didn't get an established left tackle. I think that's the move that would have kept a lot of people from giving this team an A in the offseason, A+. If they would have went out and landed a legit left tackle, it changes the way we look at how they're going to handle May, how they're going to run the football, what kind of offense they're going to be. All these things change when you have a stable left tackle on the field, on the team, whatever. But they didn't really address it directly. I don't know if they're going to move guys over or not, but now it opens the door for guys like you to write more articles and do more homework in training camp about how this guy looks at left tackle. They played this guy. They rotated this guy in. This guy's going to play the second preseason game. You're going into week 1. So-and-so is named the starter at left tackle, and you're playing that game all over again. So I really wish they would address that and solidify that left tackle spot. Maybe they tried, and this is what they ended up with, but I would have loved to see more effort with that left tackle position.
And I think a name, maybe not this week, because Chris Price, the Boston Globe, friend of the podcast, did an excellent job detailing the malaria case that Calvin Anderson dealt with. And that was a guy before he got sick. Again, 3 days before training camp, go read Chris's story. 105-degree fever. I don't know how high you've gotten in the fever department. I think I topped out at like 102 something as a kid.
Yeah.
105 is near death.